Give me a little intro there, Gomer.
There's no turning back now.
Let's put on the show.
You're listening to the Station 71 podcast. My name is Mario, and this week I'm joined by my co-hosts,
Brian.
And Kirsten.
So this week we've got a very fun topic about interactive experiences in the park. We're just going to go over some like little tidbits in history and fun, weird little things that I found while going down this rabbit hole. But of course, as always, we have to start with our news topics for this week. And since we've been on our little holiday break here, we've got a couple weird things to cover. D23 pricing was announced today for the 2022 D23 Expo, which is slated to take place September 9th through the 11th. The big change this year is that you actually have to be a D23 member to purchase the tickets. And obviously, the pricing should go down with the amount of days that you're staying, depending on the day. Do we really think D23 is going to happen this year? That's the question that I wanted to pitch to you guys.
I feel like even if it's not, held in a convention center where people are really coming to it, I don't know, I feel like Disney will want some to be able to put the good press out there that they want. So even if this turns into a virtual thing, I think they'll do it.
I would be okay with a virtual D23. I think that would be actually a solid choice.
Mm-hmm. Plus, then nobody will be able to boo Chapek in person, so they'll probably like that.
I mean, that's very fair. That's probably the real reason they would want to go digital.
I would boo Chapek if I went.
Were you one of the people holding signs out for the?
Oh my gosh,
the marathon.
Run Disney better than Chapek. No, but I love that person.
That dude is a hero in my book.
Yeah, I mean, the cleverness of that sign alone deserves all the awards, right?
Definitely. But as far as the expo goes, I don't know if I ever really looked seriously about buying a ticket and actually going to it, but the pricing isn't as bad as I thought it would be.
No.
I mean, the preferred seating is ridiculous, but just for the general one, it's not that bad.
It makes me want to go.
Yeah.
I've never really looked at it, but now I'm like, oh, that's not expensive. I should go.
Yeah, that was my first reaction too. I looked at it. I was like, that's actually relatively affordable. I wonder what hotel prices are, because that would be the make or break.
Thing. I know hotels and getting a plane out there for me is what would be much more expensive than the actual expo itself.
Yeah. So the next little bit of news that we have on here is following the final trip of Disney's Magical Express. We have some changes to the pricing of the Mears Connect Express service to Walt Disney World. If you are planning on flying into the Orlando airport and want to take a Mears Express, you are looking at $16 for an adult for a one-way trip and $13 per child for a one-way trip, $32 per adult for a round trip, and $27 per child for a round trip. You already know my feelings on this.
Yeah. I don't know. This just seems like it's just very sad. I never even took the Magical Express, but it was always cool to know that it existed. That Disney would, that they were willing to spend a little extra money to make literally, the entirety of your trip to Disney World like part of that Disney experience from the time you get picked up to the airport till the time you get dropped back off at the airport. And with that gone, it's just
sad.
It is sad.
Yeah. That's the part that gets me is like it feels like for me, and I've said this before, like part of why I love Disney trips is because everything feels like it's not just easy, but everything is kind of thought out for me, right? Like yeah, I have to do some mild planning on my part, but I can still get the vacation I expect out of it. And now like this is just one extra thing that I have to plan. Honestly, it's probably cheaper to Uber now. Like just even if not cheaper, comparable. Like we did it on our last trip because the line for Magical Express was so long, and
The
I don't
problem
think
is families, because
Yeah.
like if you have kids in car
Yeah.
seats and you don't bring your car seats, like that's where the issue is. Right?
that was exactly what I was gonna say. Is it feels very targeted to not me, right? Like, I mean, if you don't like, your choice now is take the Mears Express and pay their premium, or rent a car, and it feels like for a family, renting a car almost feels like the better option because now you have it on property.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. This, like I said, this is just another one of those things. I probably would have never used it, but it's just sad to see another thing getting taken away from the Disney experience.
Yeah. We'll see if they come up with anything that's similar, or I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if Disney decides to do their own sort of transportation service and charges a premium for it, because that seems to be the way that we're headed, but we'll see.
Yep.
And then the last thing that we've got on here for news this week is that there have been some price increases to snacks, sodas, Dole Whips, Mickey bars, all of the fun extra little refreshments you could grab. Not major increases, but it feels like the yearly price increases are upon us. So
It was like almost everything. Tom Bricker said that like a lot of entrees jumped by $2 or $3.
Really?
Yeah, he said he thinks it was over 1,000 items, but there's no like comprehensive list. So
yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I know we're in that time of year where like things start to change prices for Disney, but like that's kind of insane with that amount of items.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I bet it's partially due to like supply chain issues and that stuff going up. Like I know meat has been really expensive to get. I went to this barbecue restaurant the other day and they were talking about it. But like, you know, they're not going to lower prices once things go back to, you know, quote unquote normal, if normal ever happens again.
Yeah.
Of course not.
Did you guys see the weird controversy with Galaxy's Edge, the lightsabers and the droids, and them not giving the complimentary carrying cases for both of them because
that seems like BS.
Yeah. I'm so conflicted on if that's a supply chain issue or if that's like them testing something out. Like all of the original articles were like, this is what's going on, because it was the lightsabers were the first ones, right? Like they were the ones that they stopped giving the carry cases for, and then it was like, but you could still buy one for $50 in Doc Onders. And then I looked at them and I realized that the ones that they were selling were like the deluxe ones with the little like pockets and everything. The one that you get is basically a pool noodle. And
Wow.
it's so the one that comes complimentary with it, it's like a bag that's got a pool noodle liner on the outside so that like you could stuff the lightsaber in there and it doesn't break, which makes sense. But what they were doing was they were giving guests plastic bags to put their lightsabers in.
Oh man.
So it's like it almost wasn't even in
That's
anything.
janky.
Yeah. And they were saying it was due to a supply chain issue, but then like the next day Droid Depot stopped sending people out with boxes. So it's like that kind of feels like a weird coincidence.
See, I don't know. I find that hard to believe, because if there's any corporation that is going to be able to put their foot down and say, no, you're going to make these for us, or we're going to go to the next bidder, you know, and that be the end of it, it's Disney. So for them to run into a supply chain issue and it stopped that's very hard for me to believe.
Here's
and that
one
they wouldn't have backups or anything like that ready to go.
Yeah, I'm sending you guys one of the articles. This one's from Inside the Magic, so take that for what it is. But they were originally they weren't discounting the purchase, so it was like you were still paying a full $200, and you were getting this plastic bag. But then, like, apparently the next day, people started going back and they were giving discounts on. I don't know if it was the purchase of the carry case or if they were refunding for part of the experience. But it's just all sorts of crazy.
Dang. Seems like we had a pretty concise little theme run for news this week.
Yeah, lots of price increases and very depressing monetization stuff. However, I think what's funny about that is our topic this week is largely about free things. So this topic came from our Discord from Taco Bell Mel. She suggested an episode on interactive things that you can or once could do at Disney, along the lines of like Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom, A Pirate's Adventure, and then this was one that actually kind of started a weird little rabbit hole. Was the Magical Moments pins that you could get? I knew that there were ears that you could get during the shows because I have a set of those, but basically just some stuff that you could do that kind of interacted with the park in a new way. And the first thing that I found that came to mind was the Kim Possible World Showcase Adventure that premiered in 2006. Did any of you do this before I go down my little rabbit hole here?
This one I have not done.
Okay.
I think I did it like when I was on my program. That sounds familiar, but like I don't really recall it.
So this whole scavenger hunt, it went through a lot of different changes, and I mean, I'm sure we've at all one point seen a version of this, but the Kim Possible World Showcase Adventure was the first one that was created, and it was actually part of the Living Character Initiative. I don't know how they were planning on tying it in, but it makes sense because it was around the same time that they were doing like Push and Lucky the Dinosaur and all that stuff. But basically guests would go to this kiosk where they were given Verizon flip phones that were specially coded to show like video clips and interact with sections of the park. So this actually soft opened in 2006 and then later premiered in 2009. The original version was set in 2 pavilions. So it started in the Canada Pavilion where you would go upstairs to like this room. You would get shown this video that kind of explained what would happen on your adventure, and then you would go to either the France or the UK pavilion and solve like a little mini mystery, and then it would lead you back to Imagination where you would go upstairs in the old Imageworks pavilion and you would have a final battle with Dr. Draken and Shigo from the series. So this was actually one thing that I found that I didn't put in here is this is the first time that guests were actually able to go upstairs in the Imageworks pavilion since it had closed, which is kind of crazy. Like I wish that they would have incorporated something in there to, you know, keep that part of the pavilion alive.
Yeah.
But when the final version opened in Epcot in 2009, it was slightly different than the test version. It was just basically scaled up to accommodate more guests, and it offered multiple stations where guests could pick up their communicators. It was, you could go to the Innovations East or West buildings, anywhere down the Future World path, and there were 2 entrances on World Showcase that you could pick up a communicator, and then you would actually head into one of 7 of the World Showcase pavilions to basically do a little mini scavenger hunt, which kind of ended at the end of your adventure. It ditched the Imageworks pavilion for more scaled down, tied into the story ending. The neat thing about this, though, is that each of the 7 countries that were involved had their own different plots. So you could play one, and then you could go to return your communicator, and then you could ask them to do it again, and you could go to a different country. So there was more variation to it to do different ones. So at the start, you would go to one of these the pickup spots. You would pick up your phone, and then it would show you like a little video. It would lead you to a pavilion. and then you would have to track down one of the bad guys from the Kim Possible series. The most interesting part about this was how it interacted with the actual pavilions. So some of the clues that it would give you would have you interact with the cast members. It would use built-in cameras around the park to take photos of guests, and you could also use your phone to interact with different parts of the park. Like it would tell you if you were closer to a clue or things like that, and you could interact with various different parts of scenery, which some of that is still around today around for when Agent P's World Showcase Adventure was still around. I think that was probably the neatest part of this one, was that it just interacted with everything. But overall, the actual experience was pretty well received. A lot of places that had like reviews for it, I saw a lot of like really high rated reviews saying that it added a lot to World Showcase, and it was really nice for kids to have like an extra experience. 6 years from its soft opening and 5 years after the show had ended its run, Kim Possible would end up being overhauled for a new adventure and a brand new IP. So very long lifespan on that one.
Mm-hmm. And I think you're right. Like, it's good to see stuff like that in World Showcase because, you know, especially for kids, World Showcase can be a little bit of a drag, you know, by the time you're getting around all the pavilions. So to have something to kind of keep their attention and it be tied to an IP that they know is good.
I was surprised with how long this lasted too. I remember it being there for a while, but I was surprised that it was like it lasted 5 years longer than the show itself.
Well, yeah, and especially for this kind of being like Disney's first foray into this interactive scavenger hunt thing in the park.
Yeah, and it lasted a lot longer than I had expected it to.
So I never really watched Kim Possible, but was this like at the peak of Kim Possible
I don't
fandom?
think so. I feel like Kim Possible was like when I was like a preteen or something, you know, like 2000, 2001, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I feel like this. So I looked it up when I was doing the research. I'll have to look it up again. When Kim Possible aired, but Kim Possible was on for a long time before they had even considered this. So it was 2002 through 2007. So This was like the end of Kim Possible airing, which is kind of weird, but also kind of neat that it lasted so long.
Yeah.
But after it was Kim Possible, it then got overhauled to a, I guess, more relevant at the time IP for Phineas and Ferb for Agent P's World Showcase Adventure. One thing that I've noted about this is that it was pretty much the same attraction. The only difference was guests would get an AT&T flip phone instead of a Verizon flip phone because the sponsor changed. That and the animatronics that were used for some of the sections, like the parts that you would get to interact with in World Showcase Pavilion, were reskinned for more tie-ins to Phineas and Ferb. Basically just using the IP to a higher degree, I guess. Yeah, I put a lot of notes in here, but there's really not much to go over because it's the same thing. It reused the same mechanics as its predecessor, like some of the singing steins in Germany, or receiving a chai tea sample in the UK pavilion. It's really pretty much it. This one lasted up until 2019 when they announced that it was going to be rethemed to DuckTales. Unfortunately, that got delayed due to the pandemic. Oh, and another piece to note that I kind of glossed over was it took them from 2012 to 2016 to ditch the flip phones. Yeah. So 2016, they announced that the game would no longer use the flip phones, and they would instead be able to incorporate guest cell phones. And then 2 years later, it got transferred over to the Disney Parks Play app. So yeah, I'm sure we all know how well that went.
You know, I think like the original idea with them giving you a phone is pretty cool, and obviously I'm sure the sponsors loved that.
Yeah. I mean, looking at them, it was like a blast from the past, though. But it was cool because, like, you got handed this actual piece of technology that was supposed to guide you through the park. And, like, with the Kim Possible one, I guess probably similarly with the Agent P's one, but I never did that one, was that the phone was programmed to do its own thing. So it wasn't like you opened up the phone like you would a regular phone and you would have the option to dial out or anything. You opened up the phone and it was like a video of someone from Kim Possible walking through your mission with you.
Oh, cool.
And then, like, you could push buttons on the phone to do different things. Like, it would tell you to push OK to continue to the next step, or push help to get more information about your next clue. And, like, it wasn't the phone software. It was like Disney's software built onto this phone to run this interactive experience, which feels kind of ahead of its time for what that was.
I mean, 2006, yeah, kind of was.
The next bit of interactivity here that I have is a 2008 piece of nostalgia. Pal Mickey. Do you guys remember this one?
Oh
Yes.
boy, yep.
I never had one, but I remember wanting one so bad. And looking at it in retrospect, it does not feel like I should have had one. So, for those that don't know, Pal Mickey was an interactive stuffed toy that was sold in all 4 of the Disney theme parks, or Walt Disney World theme parks, as well as Downtown Disney. Guests who purchased Pal Mickey would be able to carry him around the parks, where he would communicate with a bunch of infrared transmitters around the park to tell guests about different things going on throughout the day, like give reminders of upcoming parades, show times, as well as tips on where characters might be and what attractions would have shorter wait times. If you got close to an interactive sensor, Mickey would giggle and vibrate, and you would have to, like, squeeze his hand or his stomach to get him to give you the information. Very much of its time.
So yeah, Disney was basically like, you remember Furby that came out 10 years ago? Let's incorporate that technology.
Yeah. He was also programmed, this was the cool thing, was that he was programmed to remember where he had been previously. So, like, say you were near the parade route and he told you, oh, the parade's going to be coming at 3:00, and then you walk away and come back to the parade route, Mickey wouldn't tell you again. So, pretty neat. I mean, I would get pretty annoyed if Mickey just kept yelling at me the parade times for the day. For the price of $50, guests could purchase a Pal Mickey of the original run, or they could rent one for $8 a day. Of course, Disney being Disney, special edition Pal Mickeys were designed and, of course, sold at a premium pricing of $65.
Jeez Louise.
So let's say you purchase one of these things, though. Like, once you leave and go home, it's just a stuffed toy, right? I mean,
so that I don't know. I want to say no, because there were parts of it that I feel like probably could have worked outside of the park. The attractions and stuff, obviously that wouldn't work because you weren't near the infrared sensors. But also, as kind of like a segue to this next point that I have on here, you could play games with the Pal Mickey too. So guests that were trying to play games with their Pal Mickey would be able to play one of 3 games on the initial run. One that was called That Isn't Here, where Mickey would describe a theme park and then say the names of some of the attractions, and guests would have to squeeze his hand or stomach depending on if the attraction was in the park or not. They'd be able to play a version of Simon Says called Mickey Says, which, I mean, that's in its name. And then there was one called Fast Friends, where Mickey would say the name of a Disney character and you would have to respond to whichever way he says. You have to respond, like, if I say Goofy, squeeze my left hand, or when I say the name of someone who can fly, squeeze my right hand. And you would have to try to do it as fast as possible. Those were the 3 original ones. There were 3 more that were added in the Celebration Mickey for the later premium ones. But I think those would probably work outside of the park, so that doesn't feel like it needs to be there to do it.
yeah.
But still, $65 for that?
I mean, I'm sure there are people that would pay $65 for just a stuffed Mickey.
Well,
That's a good point.
people need to not do that.
One thing that I did find was that Pal Mickey was discontinued in 2014, which I don't remember him being around that late. There's kind of a
'Cause
varying.
you were a full-grown adult by then, Mario.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's fair. There were some reports of him working as late as 2017, but I couldn't find anything that actually confirmed it. Most places I was looking at said that a lot of the technology was turned off as early as 2015 as well. So that lasted a lot longer than I expected it to. Did you guys have any interaction with that at all? Because the most that I remember is they used to play this commercial on the Magical Express when you were going down, and it basically it was like Pal Mickey, your tour guide to the Disney parks, and it would just show you the things that he did, and I was like, wow, that's so cool, I need that. And of course, I absolutely did not need that.
No, I mean,
I remember being a grown-up, so I did not care.
I remember seeing people have them in the parks, but that's kind of one of those pieces of merchandise that I feel like would be cool for about 5 minutes, and then I just get annoyed with it, like talking to me all the time. So I did not have one firsthand.
Yeah, I'm sure that would probably get annoying after a while too. So here's my deep dive for the week. And probably the biggest one that most people remember, but Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom. Before I dive into this one, I know we kind of briefly talked about this before we started recording. Did you guys have any experience with this at all?
I think it was opening like around the time I was there, probably a little after I left, but I feel like when I was there after my program, we did it like one time and it was cool, but like we were like, okay, this is too much trouble to run back and forth, like whatever, and then we were over it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I specifically didn't, just because I was so deep into pin trading, but I feel like that's a lot of people have said that, like the downside is you kind of have to map your day around doing it, or be willing to not take the most efficient way through the park if you really want to do Sorcerers.
I did it once, and I feel like I've realized the fault in the design of Sorcerers as I was doing my deep dive on this. The concept itself, super cool. I think that Disney should have something like this because it creates such a unique experience. But I think that there's a couple little things that I've highlighted that are kind of faulty on this one. For those that don't know, Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom was a card-based game that was played throughout the park. It opened in 2012 and featured Merlin from Sword in the Stone, and he would be recruiting guests to become sorcerers' apprentices, where they would... Jesus, I spelled a lot of things very wrong in this section, so don't mind my horrible fast typing here. But he would recruit guests to become sorcerers' apprentices, where they would battle various Disney villains recruited by Hades throughout the park in every themed land except Tomorrowland. Fun little fact about this is actually leaked by the voice actor of Jafar while on tour for the Aladdin the Musical, or on a press tour for the Aladdin the Musical. He mentioned that he would be reprising his role of Jafar for a new attraction in Walt Disney World, where guests would battle the villains around the park. Like, such a weird way for that to be first mentioned. So if you were getting started with Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom, you would start at the Firehouse. That would be the primary place to start. There was also an outpost behind the Christmas shop, but you kind of missed a lot if you started there. That was more recommended if you were picking the game back up on a second visit, or just there to get your card packs for the day. When you first got to the Firehouse, you'd be handed a key card prior to the magic bands. You would also be handed a pack of cards and a stylized map that would have symbols to show the portals around the park. If you were starting at the Firehouse, there was also a practice portal where you could be shown how to play the game. Basically, they would touch your key card to the little key. It would say, this is how you play the game, and then you would hold a card up to the window to cast one of the spells corresponding with your card, and then you would be sent off on your adventure. So it also taught you like the basics of everything. There's a story behind it as well, where Hades was apparently bored with the underworld and was looking for a new summer home. So he came to the Magic Kingdom looking for an ideal spot. Merlin has this crystal thing that protects the Magic Kingdom, and Hades sends Pain and Panic up to go get it, and it splits the crystal into a bunch of different pieces where the villains go get it, and then you have to fight them for the crystals. That was the basic plot of Sorcerers, which I honestly didn't even know it had a plot.
I didn't either.
So once you completed the tutorial, the portal would actually use a computer algorithm to direct guests to their next portal. You couldn't just say, okay, well, I'm done the tutorial, I'm going to go to Frontierland. It would tell you like specifically where you would go. The algorithm itself was supposed to avoid clogging up the portals throughout the park by allowing multiple guests to experience the attraction, and sending, like, it wouldn't send me off to Frontierland and Brian also off to Frontierland one after the other. It would say, you're going to go to Frontierland, you're going to go to Fantasyland. So it would try to split guests up throughout the park and divvy up the crowd, which I think that's a great idea and use of technology.
Mm-hmm.
So the basics of the game were that you would go up to the portals. They would ask you to do like a little challenge by holding up one of the cards that you were gifted in the pack to defeat the villains. You would basically cast the spells that were on the card. And the portals would read it by like these little cameras that were right around them. So it would see the image on the card, and it would read the card using that spell to cast to defeat the villain. One of the neat things that I found out that I also didn't know that was horribly advertised with Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom is the game actually featured multiple difficulties. So you had an easy, medium, and hard mode, all of which would require various effort to actually play the game. So on easy, you could literally go up to the portal, you could cast a spell, and it would do it. On medium, you had to follow this like rock, paper, scissors type of system where every villain would have a weakness and a strength, and you would have to cast multiples of the spells to weaken them based off of what their weaknesses were. So the game got more in depth the more you played it, which is kind of interesting. And then the hard mode was by far the most confusing thing, and I feel like I still don't understand this even after reading it. Basically, you would still have to follow the rock, paper, scissors type battle system, but you couldn't use the same card in a row. So you would have to use multiple different cards of different types to try to beat the villains. And the way that a lot of the message boards that I was reading about this recommended doing that was by holding up your entire card collection and then trying to match the animations on the portal with the colors of the cards, which just feels like an insane, like, yeah, no, it's all sorts of wild. But what was crazy is that the hard mode, you would have to actually do these attacks multiple times in order to beat the villain in the window. And if you failed even once, you would have to restart the entire encounter. So there was like in the hard mode, there was also these things that were like combined attacks where you could combine two cards, and you had to know the exact patterns of which they were formed together to combine to properly use them. So like there were a lot of like intricacies to this game that I feel like nobody experienced.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever, like, I've never played it, but I've definitely watched people as they play it. And I don't think I've ever, clearly I never saw anybody do hard mode because it seemed relatively laid back from all my experiences.
Yeah, no, I feel like the hard mode seems super stressful, and I don't even really know that I want to play it on hard mode.
I feel like this could have been a video game. Like, this seems way too complicated for like a casual play in the park interactive game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's the part that kind of is interesting to me, right? Like, you could, feasibly play it on easy one trip, come back the next time, play it on medium the next time, and then play it on hard the next time, as long as you kept that key card. Like your ticket could change, but if you kept that key card, you could keep going up in level. One, I feel like that was never advertised, and I think it would probably have been better for them to like let guests select how hard they want to play it instead of making you go through all the steps, because I feel like even the medium seems kind of like I've been to the parks for a couple days, I go so often, maybe I want to play this game, but easy seems a little too like, I'm just going to hold this up and I'm going to win. Like, I don't want to go through that effort. Maybe I want to try something new. And I think that would have been a nice system for them to play in that space. And I don't know that it would have ever made it past I would have ever made it past medium if I were playing it on this type of level.
This still seems way too complicated for everybody who doesn't go to Disney like on a weekly basis.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, if I'm at Disney World, I want to be like writing something, or I don't want to be like, okay, now last time when I was here, this is what I did. Here are all my cards. Like,
yeah,
it just seems like of all the money, all the things they'll spend money on, I just feel like, why?
Yeah,
I think this was definitely aimed at big Disney fans that were coming back fairly frequently, because there's no way if you were going like once a year or once every couple of years, you would probably want to blow your Magic Kingdom day doing this.
Yeah, that was the problem that I definitely saw with it in researching, is like, for me, someone that goes relatively often, like, I could see this being fun on the like instead of like a pool day, maybe I would spend the money to go to the park, like to a park, and do this if I wasn't planning on doing all of these rides one day, or if I didn't want to ride rides one day. This might be a nice little thing. Or even for like kids that get there and realize they don't want to do rides, this is a nice way to like get your money's worth out of it, but like get an experience out of being in the park. But one of the cool things that kind of came from that too is that these card packs were free once per day. So you could go, if you were in the Magic Kingdom like 3 days in a row, but you only planned on playing the last day, you could still go in and collect your packs and get the cards and then trade them with other people. So it kind of became like a free version of pin trading. There was this whole community of people that would trade Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom cards to try to complete their sets and obviously find the more rare cards. There were also special cards that were exclusive to Disney ticketed events, and then also ones that were for sale at a couple of the stores throughout the parks. Although the nice thing about that is none of those cards were terribly overpowered in the grand scheme of things and weren't required to actually beat the game. But of course, the adventure came to an end on January 7th, 2021. It was announced that the game would be shutting down as a result of changes in guest use of mobile technology and a general decline in the interest. The game's final day was the 24th of January. Surprisingly, I watched a couple videos today of like the closing day, and there were a lot of people playing on that day.
I mean, the last hurrah of it, I saw this almost every time I was in the park, and for someone that didn't actively take part in it, I figured that kind of speaks to its popularity.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised, because this was one of those things that I felt like a lot of people that didn't even play still wanted to collect the cards. So, Disney was making pretty decent bank off at that.
Yeah. I stumbled into the like underground world of people that collect Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom cards. I tried to keep these notes light because I didn't want this to be another Duffy episode. There was like people that had spreadsheets of the cards that had them marked off to know which ones they had and which ones they still needed. I also found out that there are a couple cards that Disney printed multiples of the card with various artworks on. It was a trip and a half.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so the collector in a lot of these people is probably very upset that they may not be able to complete their sets.
Man, oh man.
But on a related note, for an attraction that's still around, Pirates Adventure Treasure of the Seven Seas. Did you guys do this one by any chance?
No.
I did not do the full one. I'll let you get to it, but I did the slightly abbreviated version.
Gotcha. So, kind of similar to Sorcerers, but also on a toned down scale, and also very similar to the first World Showcase Adventure thing that we talked about. Magic Kingdom has a Pirates Adventure in Adventureland where you're given a map, a talisman, and like a couple clues to go through Adventureland and solve a couple different puzzles to try to help Jack track down some treasures throughout Adventureland. Doesn't seem like there is really a big overarching story other than you're trying to become an honorary pirate. General premise is that you're going to get a map at the cartography shop near the Golden Oak Outpost. And unlike the Sorcerers of the Magic Kingdom, you are free to choose wherever you start. So you can pick a starting location, touch your magic band to the symbol that's on the like little pad nearby, and it starts a basically 30 to 45 second activity, which guides you along to other spots. And if you complete all 5, you become an honorary pirate. This one's nice because it's small, it's contained in Adventureland, and it borrows parts of like the World Showcase Adventure games by integrating a lot of the attraction and the larger story of the land into this nice little like scavenger hunt style game. It did close down for a brief period during the pandemic and then reopened as a refurbished part of the 50th anniversary celebrations. And Touring Plans also has this marked as a not to be missed attraction, which I thought was fun.
It honestly, me and Jordan did this maybe 2 years ago, and it was one of the, you go by it, you see it, and we would always say, yeah, we should do that one time, and we just never did. And then we finally kind of had a slow day, and we said, you know what, let's go ahead and do it. And it was really one of the more fun things that I've done. Like going into it not having very high expectations, it really was cool, and it made you. I'm trying to think how to phrase it. It made you.
Did you feel like a pirate?
Well, not necessarily, but it did. It was cool that it made you go to like parts of Adventureland. It really felt like you were kind of having to like go and find these kind of hidden things there. So it just made you appreciate more of the like in-depth theming, I feel like, of Adventureland, because like I remember part of it you have to kind of go through the bazaar and find something there, and I remember just thinking like I almost never go through here, and I didn't even know a lot of the little interactive parts that you find were there until we did it. So I definitely think it's worth doing. It's a lot of fun.
I've heard a lot of good things about this, and I've never actually stopped to do it myself. I feel like at some point I have to, because this is like, I like that it's smaller, it's more contained, and the complaint that you were talking about with Sorcerers, where it's like, okay, well, you have to take this not optimized path through Magic Kingdom. Like, okay, yeah, maybe you're not going through Adventureland the way that you would before, but it's not that big of a deal. Like, it's less all around the park than something like Sorcerers would be.
Right. And it's cool. I actually am looking at it right now. I have my little map hanging on the wall, which I don't know if I was supposed to take. But I have it, and it's a really cool design.
I'm sure you probably are allowed.
I hope so. It's one of those things like it's made out of paper, but it's like really nice, like thick, like plastic coated paper. So I don't know, but anyways,
Maybe you are.
It's cool. Have a little memento from it.
Yeah, I think this is like I think Pirates League is probably the one that does it the best. Like, I like the idea of the World Showcase Adventures, but I feel like integrating them into your phone is, obviously it's the way of technology now, but I like that this is like okay, We could start it, we could stop it, we can do whatever we want, we can go as far as we want to, and at the end of the day, like it almost kind of feels like a surprise experience because you have to walk up to a cast member, you have to talk to them about it. Like you can't just start it right on your phone and do the experience.
Right.
This is like the kind of thing that I want them to do more of.
And the fact that you're given the little talisman thing, but that really just activates the the experience at each location. You're essentially given like a map and said, here you go, and like that makes it feel so fitting to be part of Adventureland because it's not a thing on a phone that feels like you're having your hand held through it. Like you're given a map and you really are just like, you're gonna have to find stuff and you're not gonna be able to progress until you complete each thing. So yeah, it's one of those things that it doesn't, Disney doesn't have to spend a whole bunch of money implementing it. It can be a really fun little unique experience that you can just do in the park. And I would love to see some version of this like throughout the lands.
Yeah. If you wanted to do all 5 of the missions too, it would apparently only take you an hour and 40 minutes to do all of them, which isn't that bad. Like that's a solid chunk of time, but like compared to Sorcerers, which to complete all of Sorcerers, I was reading in one run, it would take you about 2 hours to do everything. I think it may have been more, but that's about what it feels like.
Dang, well, me and Jordan must have been moving real slow because I feel like it took us like an hour to do one of them. So maybe we were doing it on hard mode.
Maybe. So I just had like at the very end of this a list of just some other interactive things that I found along the way. Wilderness Explorers, we've talked about that a lot. I like this one for an interactive standpoint, but I also feel like we've talked to death about the scavenger hunt type of situations. The neat thing about this is that it ties into Animal Kingdom and it feels very cohesive with the message of the park. It also teaches you about various animals and other things around the park as well. So it's a nice little addition.
I like it because not only are you getting to learn some stuff too, but you get, really good cast member interaction at each station. So that's always a plus.
Yeah. The next one that I had on here is Glow with the Show and Made with Magic products. You guys know about these, right? Like,
oh yes.
Yeah. And they're going to keep doing that with the new Magic Bands, huh?
Yes.
It's going to be like a similar.
So this technology, it's been around since 2012. It's basically integrated products that interact with show experiences. Started with Fantasmic in Disneyland, where they had ears that guests were allowed to wear during the show that would sync up with the lights and the sounds of the show. And then they made their way over to Walt Disney World. They were integrated to work with Wishes, Fantasmic, and Celebrate the Magic when they came over here, which all of that feels very dated at this point. They come in the form of Mickey ear hats, the headbands, and then like these magic wand things. And like Kirsten said, they're going to sync up Magic Bands now with the same technology, which I think that's a nice little way to bring it full circle.
Yeah.
And
I mean, if they can use that to sell new Magic Bands, they're going to do it.
Yeah, anything to sell more Magic Bands, right? And then this last little one on here that I had, which I thought this was pretty neat, was they had a 100 years of Magic pin, which they were a set of like 5 different pins that you could buy individually. Or not buy, they would be collected through like a promotion. I think some of them were given out, some of them were purchased. I don't remember the exact thing because it was kind of all over the place when I was looking. But they were these like large plastic pins. Each one would represent a different park. Like they would have the Sorcerer's Hat for Hollywood Studios, the Tree of Life for Animal Kingdom, stuff like that. And they would also have the 100 Years logo on them. They were actually like these little wired LED pins that had like little LED lights in them. And whenever you got near certain points or different attractions, an infrared beam would trigger the little cells inside the pin to make like different light patterns. I didn't even know about this until I saw them. They are so like big and straight out of the 90s, but they are super cool, and I wish that they would do stuff like this again.
You know what's insane? As you were talking, I decided to jump on eBay because I figured these things would be going for a lot.
Oh, they're probably
And
super cheap, aren't they?
They're really, yeah, they're actually not that bad. I have one of these, and I never realized that it lit up. So,
Oh my gosh.
That's
Yeah,
pretty funny.
yes, I have the Sorcerer's Hat one. That was actually one of the first pins I got, and I did not know that it lit up.
Hey,
So,
fun little
yeah.
information for your collection now.
Yeah.
But they
How
were
much
called.
is it worth?
$6.
Oh well.
I found a set of 4 of them for $15.
And you can get it looks like all 16 for 100. Not
Oh.
bad. That's like trader prices almost.
I love the concept of these though. Like, okay, you have this giant pin that's kind of super tacky, but like, I get near a section of the park and it's gonna do something. I'm all in. Like, but that's all the. Good.
I just can't believe I've had this thing the whole time. I didn't realize it lit up.
I can't either. You should not have said that. It's embarrassing for you.
No, that's quality content. He needed to say that.
Don't love this journey for you.
That's all the interactive stuff that I found. I'm sure there's more, and I'm sure that there's more stuff coming. But before we wrap this up, I wanted to ask you guys, like, for interactive experiences in the park, like, what is something that would, like, for me, I like these, like, little things where you go near stuff and it lights up, or it does like a little interactive little bit. For you guys, like, what is a good interactive experience that you look for in the parks, or something that you would want them to integrate more of?
Don't take Bob Chapek.
I mean, that would definitely be interactive.
You know how much money people would pay to do that? Now it's like,
So much money.
let's go Disney. How much do you want to make money? Because here's the opportunity.
Yep.
But on a serious note, I always love a good scavenger hunt. But one thing that I'm really surprised that doesn't exist is, something in Epcot where you could go around and I don't know whether it be like, I know there's Kid Cop, but something more maybe, targeted towards adult where you go and learn or do some interactive activity that relates to each country's culture and like collect something and try to fill out, a thing where you get something from every country. That seems like kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say, this only goes to your first point, but whenever I was doing my program, they had like a morning scavenger hunt in Epcot one day. I personally thought it was a blast. I had a lot of fun. I was like the only one on my little team, but I thought it was awesome. So
Wait, this was like for the cast members to do?
Yeah.
What were you like trying to find, or is it just random stuff each time?
It was just random stuff, like little things, like hidden Mickey, like kind of like a hidden Mickey type of thing, like specific pieces, like things on statues or things in paintings, whatever.
No, I would
yeah,
love
really
that.
fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Even if it was something as simple as like hidden Mickeys and stuff like that, that just feels like a good time. Like, I don't know, I always used to love the hidden Mickey books and stuff like that, where you could take them around the park and find the little hidden things. I think stuff like that's really cool. I didn't put that on this list specifically because I feel like we've talked about those a lot. But even you brought up Kid Cot too. Like, that's such a cool interactive experience that I almost put on here but didn't, because I feel like that's kind of also dying off.
Yeah, which is sad because, like I was saying earlier, it's always good to have something kind of more interactive, I feel like, for kids, because it's kind of easy to lose them in World Showcase. So, And most of the little stations are just a little simple, like sometimes just a coloring activity or something like that. But it's something to keep them entertained and focused on something. So
They need something
I
for the
hope
drunk adults now too.
Exactly. That's the fun thing. Like how drunk can you be and still like color inside the lines? Maybe they just need to open up Kid Cot to drunk adults too.
Maybe. Well, any closing remarks this week before we wrap up?
I think this was a very comprehensive list of all the fun little extra interactive stuff to do.
I kind of hope that they bring DuckTales, like that actually comes full circle. I doubt it because it's been how long since DuckTales has been on, but
Well,
I don't
they
know.
have the new one now.
Well, didn't that end like
I think so.
during the pandemic?
And I'm also hoping if they do it that it's like themed to the old one, but
Yeah, that's fair.
I don't know. I feel, but it's like, that if they want to get that millennial, something for the millennials to do in the parks now, like DuckTales was it back in the day, So I think it's a good IP to base it off of.
True.
Please stand clear of the doors. Por favor, manténganse alejado de las puertas.